you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. This is Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. Welcome to the big show, my family and friends. We certainly appreciate it. As always, the Chris Voss Show. Family loves you, doesn't judge you. They moved my buttons here.
Oh, you got buttons.
We have buttons, but they just push an update on StreamYard. And I'm like, hey, where's the intro button, eh? So welcome to the big show, my family and friends. We certainly appreciate you guys being here for 16 years, 2,400 episodes of bringing the Chris Voss Show, 10 to 15 new amazing interviews every week, and all that good stuff. Today we have another great interview that we'll be talking to about a wonderful book author as a new book out on the market. In the meantime, I need you to go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss one, the TikTokity, and ChrisVossFacebook.com, I think is where we're at. I just got thrown because I can't find my button. Someone moved my cheese. Isn't that a thing? Anyway, they're the author of the latest book that just came out, or is coming out, August 26, 2025, Before They Were Men, Essays on Manhood, Compassion, and What Went Wrong. Jacob Tobia joins us on the show. We're going to get into it with him and talk to about his new book, his insights, his experience and life journey, and all those great things that we do in collecting stories. Jacob is a gender nonconforming writer, producer, and performer based in Los Angeles. He's a member of the Forbes 30 Under 30 and the Out 100. Jacob has made history on television, voicing the non-binary character of Double Trouble in Netflix's She-Ra and the Princess of Power. Welcome to the show, Jacob. How are you?
I'm good. It's nice to be here. How are you doing, Chris?
I am excellent. It's a pleasure to have you as well. Give us your .coms. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
www.jacobtobia.com and at Jacob Tobia across all socials.
So give us a 30,000 overview. What's in the new book?
You know, my first book, Sissy, is a memoir of my coming of gender story and how I came to understand myself as a gender nonconforming person, as a non-binary person, sort of taking people on that path with me. And, you know, I wasn't sure exactly where I was going to go with book two. And I've just been watching the world and seeing how things have unfurled and could not fight and still can't fight this kind of sneaking suspicion that there is a lot going on with men and boys right now in terms of mental health, in terms of a real need for more complicated conversations, right? In terms of a need for championing that I just couldn't deny that I needed to focus on this, right? So much of my own experience has been escaping some of the parts of masculinity that like really didn't work for me, that just didn't make me happy, that didn't make me feel good, and finding what joy meant for me. And I was like, I have some lessons for kind of both sides of the aisle here from that experience in the middle. And that's kind of where the book came from.
Now, we've heard different stats and stories lately on men's issues. Are there any stats that you want to quote or any research you want to cite from your book and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few statistics in the book that I think are really powerful. And the way that I have it set up is like, I try to talk about kind of the intellectual and emotional stuff without plugging too many statistics, not because statistics aren't important, but because the statistics are really sharp, like they're really hard to sit with. And I think a lot of times in like public health writing and in science, in sort of academic writing, people just throw statistics at you like they're easy to hold. And, you know, and I'm like, and the way I present them in the book, it's really kind of like a poem. So you finish a chapter and then you turn to a page and there's just one page like that's blank other than the statistic. And this one says, men commit 81% of violent crime. And another statistic that I think is really important is men are 4 times more likely to die by suicide than women.
Yeah.
And I don't want to present that to my reader in the middle of an essay. I'm like, no, you got to hold that for a second. You got to press pause, sit, take a breath with it and be like, whoa, okay, if that's true, what might I not be understanding here in terms of how human suffering looks in this day and age?
So do you delve into those stats and flesh them out in the book?
Yeah, so there's a lot. The book is a lot more narratively driven and a lot more kind of like logic and reason driven, because I think when people think about gender, I don't think most people really like in general, like if you try and argue with statistics, people don't emotionally connect to statistics in the way that they connect to stories and in the way that they connect to like anecdotes and narratives. So the book has a fat like sources section, right? Like it's like 25 pages or some shit. It's nuts. I did a lot of research for this thing so that I could say simple sentences that I don't have to qualify a ton. And then the backup is in the sources section, you know? Because I think that otherwise it could really interrupt the flow. And I feel like it takes people out of the moment. Like when I'm trying to talk about, for example, I have a chapter called Child Soldiers that's all about like military violence and what it does to men and boys who I would argue are kind of preyed upon to commit it, right? To enact it. And when I say something like the United States has one of the most violent militaries ever known, like I don't want to have to cite 700 studies about all of that, like in the text. I'm like, you can accept that as a fact. And if you don't believe me, go to the back of the book. You can see where I got that from and then keep coming with me. But I don't want to stop readers in their tracks with all this data, because then it's not readable. The whole point is that you should be able to sit down with this book and not really want to stop reading it. If I succeed.
And it's a collection of essays, correct?
Yeah.
So, and then is there any memoir stuff in there or
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So kind of a spinning of your tales and stories of life and upbringing, and then essays on some of your thoughts on all of that experience.
Yeah. So I mean, one of the memoiristic essays that's in there, it's the second essay in the book. It's called Cat Calls, because one of my sort of main arguments in the book is like, as feminists, we need to spend more work building compassion and empathy for what men are going through right now. And we don't like need to do that to, you know, be good so much as that's what you should do if you care about your own heart, right?
Yeah.
You have to understand and come to a place of compassion for someone who's been hurting you. That's the only way to retake your power and to also help them potentially heal. So I talk about how the chapter Cat Calls kind of drives all that home, because I don't want people to think that like that I'm just like saying this without having done it in some pretty intense circumstances. And, you know, when I was 22, I did what a lot of college grads do, and I moved to New York City, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm in New York, I'm in the Big Apple, time to live my big queer dream life, you know, and put on my little, you know, like pencil skirt for my first day at work at this like business consulting firm that I was going to, and, you know, go to get on the subway, and this dude like full on spits on me. Just says fuck you and spits on me like on the street as I'm about to like go down the stairs. Wow. And that began, I mean, it was really on the nose, because it's just damn, my first day of work, like that's how you'd write it in the shitty movie version, you know? If I were giving notes on that script, I would say wait a few days, Jesus Christ, let the character get established before you take him down, you know? Give him a day or two at work. Shit.
Isn't that New York though? I mean, they mug you and tell you to go fuck yourself the first day.
Yeah,
when you
New
arrive
York
off
has
the
to
plane.
break you, and it does it fast. But so, you know, from that, I sort of talk about how, you know, I thought New York was going to be this place where I could be who I was and be myself. And it was a hell of like catcalling and street harassment that, like, you know, had a threat of real violence behind it. Like, it's pretty dangerous to walk around New York City as an openly gender nonconforming person. Really? Yeah, I mean, it's not like there are certain neighborhoods where one could argue it's safer, but like people still hate crimed all the time. Like there are still like people still get attacked on the street for being perceived as different. Yeah, it's not, you know, it's not often talked about as much, but you can just get fucked up late at night still, you know, or and I got really in my head and scared about that because because it was really scary. I mean, I don't know if, Chris, if you've ever sat on a subway car and had two men loudly discuss how they wanted to set you on fire, but that literally happened to me. No, like just one Saturday.
Mostly mine are ex-girlfriends that want to set me on fire.
You know, I mean, I think we all been there in some way, shape, or form.
We all, but no, I mean, you're kind of piercing a bit of a misbelief that I've always had that, you know, New York is kind of more friendly to a lot of alternative lifestyles, and a lot, you know, everybody in New York is alternative. If you walk down the street, everybody's fucking weird. Yeah. It's like everyone's different. Everyone's got different flavors. It is it's a melting pot of
Yeah.
a ton of different people, and with a lot of different ideas, and
Right.
and they're all stacked on top of each other. I was born and raised in LA. We have 12 million people. It's a lot of people, but they're all spread out and
Right.
similar. If you've ever seen jokes about California.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I lived in Los Angeles for the last 7 years. Like, I know the vibe. And but so where the chapter goes, right, is I talk about how hard that was. I mean, that shit fucked me up. Like, feeling like I was being preyed upon in public, right? And that I was just, I was pretty convinced. I was like, one day and also this was a decade ago, right? Like, that's a different historic time,
Okay.
Like things were way different a decade ago. And I was convinced, I was like, I don't know when, but sometime someone's gonna have had a real bad day and some dude's gonna fucking try me with a knife or some shit, it's a matter of time until I get attacked and I become some statistic.
And there are statistics for that where transgender and people like yourself get attacked and killed. I mean, that does happen.
Yeah, and people were talking about it a lot, and it was going on a lot when I was in sort of the era that I was living in New York. And what I had to learn, and it took a long time, but the essay really spells it out beautifully. You'll have to read the book. But what I learned through that process was, like, at first I just really hated these men who were making my life terrible. I just hated them, and hating them got me nowhere, because hating them just made me feel worse. Hating them made me feel like it made it feel scarier. It made the stakes feel higher. It made me feel like I had no path to ever living a good life. That there was no way to ever solve this. It made the problem feel completely intractable. And at a certain point, and I talk about it in the essay, like my family was on reality television for a very brief moment.
Really?
You ever heard of the show True Life, that MTV series?
I might have. I didn't.
It's like a documentary series that like, it was like iconic for like kids in my generation, and then they like still kind of making it. They're like making a few episodes once in a blue moon.
Are they?
And and they did one called The True Life, I'm Genderqueer, and it centered on like me and another person, and they interviewed my dad for it. And my dad, was still struggling to kind of be at peace with having a really gender fabulous kid. And I'm like, I'm pretty great.
I like
and
it.
Like, yeah, I'm self-aware in that sense. But he said something in the interview, like, I don't know how your dad is or was, but I feel like sometimes dads, like, you will have a neighbor over for dinner and you'll hear a story they've never told you in their entire life.
I don't know if my dad ever did that. He did get married a second time, and he lived like a whole different life with other people for 10 years. And then when I went to his funeral, I was like, what the fuck are all these pictures?
Yeah, who are you? Yeah, I feel like it's like you get your dad around a different person. Why do you have
pictures with my dad?
Right. But so I mean, my dad, he would just randomly, because he was like he was like a social butterfly. He was very bubbly. Like he would just open up when he was talking to anybody. And so he would never said these things to me, but in front of a documentary crew, there's like this random producer asking questions about his kid, and he finally says something I'd never heard him say, which is that he's just really scared for me all the time.
Oh.
That it's it's scary to have a kid, that he was scared for me in the same way I was scared for myself.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh. And and I think that really reframed something for me, because then I had this moment where I was like, what if I think about the men who are catcalling me and harassing me as like people who are witnessing something that is it's something about me defying the rules of gender is bringing up something deep for them.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's something about how they had their own gender, fucked with as a kid. Something about how they have been hurt by the requirement to be man enough or whatever. Yeah. Right? And watching me be free and live my life freely makes them feel really scared, I think. And also it brings up this, dude, I don't get to be free. Why the fuck do you get to be free? Nah, fuck you. And
I think I mean, there's a lot of the psychology, like you say, the projection of insecurities and stuff like that. But also, people, innately, I think this is human nature, when they don't understand something, when it's out of their purview or education, they react violently to it sometimes, at least men can. And so I think that, instead of this is what we need to do, and this is why we do the podcast, and I think you talk about this book, we need to understand one another more, and when we see something different, we need to not point fingers or go, what the hell is that? I think some of that is a natural fight or flight reaction that's at the core of our of our human nature, but it's inappropriate because we're not supposed to be animals. We're supposed to be beings that have a conscience that can be like, okay, why do I feel like I'm in fight or flight mode, and why do I not understand this thing that I've never seen maybe before? Although, people have been gay throughout history. So you go, okay, let me learn more about this. And, a lot of people don't have that sort of, what's George Carlin said it best: think how dumb the average person is and realize 50% of them are dumber than that.
Oh, no. I don't know if I can view humanity quite that way. Shit, that's dark.
How old are you?
I'm 33, but I'm
57.
I think people are pretty smart.
I've processed more people than you have. I'm 57.
That's true. That's true. I can't fight that.
Sorry, I'm just pulling the card on you. That was kind of inappropriate there. Sorry, Jake.
No, it's fine.
I'm pulling the Clint Eastwood get off my lawn card. No, I don't know. Maybe at 57, I'm more jaded and have less faith in humanity because I've seen so much of it pass before me. But I don't know.
I mean, I really like what you said, though, about, it's like when you see something that triggers fight or flight in you, being like, wait, give me a second. Is there something I should be learning from this instead? Right? Like, is there a way that I can pause that reaction and try to interrogate it and try to think differently about the person in front of me? And I say that because that actually has to apply both ways. Because there are times where I see men, and there have been times in my life where I see men because of my own baggage and my own sort of lived experience and my own trauma and shit, right? There have been times where I see a certain type of man and I have fight or flight, right? And I stop seeing him as a human being. And I start seeing him as, this thing I'm told men like him are supposed to be. And I started to really notice myself doing that. And I was like, if I'm not practicing what I preach here, right? If I'm not trying to understand the humanity of men differently, if I'm not trying to look back and try to connect with the people that I sort of like spent a while of my life fleeing and be like, yo, dude, I learned some stuff. If I'm not going to look back to and connect, then how can I expect the world to change and for us to all advance, right? Men are not disposable. Men are not, they're not optional. Men are a foundational part of the world, and we have to love and care for men. We have to. It's not, and we forget that sometimes, I think.
Definitely. A rising tide lifts all boats. There's two different types of thinking in the world. So there's either scarcity thinking, where everybody can be like, I want what I want, and I just want to, take everything for me and take care of me. And that's not how we live. I mean, we're on a giant survivor boat in the middle of the universe, and
in the middle of a big ass vacuum.
We all want to start kicking holes in the boat. We're all going to sink together. And a rising tide lifts all boats. I mean, we are designed, both men, women, and beings in femininity and masculinity. We're designed to be complements to each other and fill each other's gaps of what we're not. And that's just how human nature has developed over time. There's an old saying from Abraham Lincoln: I don't like that man, I must get to know him better. And so
I have not heard that. And honestly, I wish that I had heard that quote before I published the damn book, because there's a little quote section at the front, and that one would have really damn slapped, Chris. But
sorry, you should have done the podcast for your first book.
Yeah, seriously, damn. What was my publicist thinking?
No, what was your PR agent?
What were they up to?
I was actually thinking I should call you on that, and I just got lost in all the work that I do. But no, you're right. We need to take care of each other. One hot topic, I don't usually do debate shows and hot topic shows, but I suppose we can touch on one viral thing that seems to be popular in conversation. We recently had Men's Mental Health Month, and we saw a lot of TikToks of women just celebrating men's suicide, women's suicide, and men's mental health issues. I got to tell you, I run big dating groups online of thousands of people that I got to look up who wrote that article, but there was an article written that said there was a male loneliness epidemic because 88% of men aren't interested in dating women right now. And I have a 5,000 dating group. All the numbers I've pulled equal that. All the other data I see online equals that. Yeah. And they love just whipping men online with that sort of context. In fact, they pull it out pretty ugly on social media. So I don't know if you want to speak to some of those issues going on, because maybe this is part of your book on essays.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to address that because I think it really does matter. First off, men's mental health is like beyond important, right? I think we need to probably, if we quintupled the resources we were dedicating to men's mental health tomorrow, it would still not be enough. Because that's about how many resources we're dedicating, right? I recently started lifting recently, Chris. Because I'm like, I got a shitty back, and I just was like, dude, you just gotta do something to see if maybe your body can, like, maybe if your arms can lift stuff a little better, then maybe your back won't have to do so much, and you'll be like, I don't know, able to walk better. I don't know. Yeah. Like, I was just like, you got to get ahead of this. And it's interesting because I'm like, at the gym, and there's lots of women at the gym I go to too, but like, it's such a space where I'm like, I see men getting together, and I'm just like, what a missed opportunity for mental health resources, right? Like, the gyms, we literally have so many places where men are gathering, where we're not even bothering to try to, I had this vision the other day. It was like a shower thought, and I was like, I want to live in a world where at the gym, in like the men's locker room, they have a little like flyer that's, hey, like muscle dysmorphia is a real thing. If you're like feeling weird, be careful around like your body and ensure that, you're getting help if you're dealing with that. Because
what's muscle dysmorphia?
Muscle dysmorphia is it's a subshoot of body dysmorphia in general, which is, so body dysmorphia is a clinical condition where like you literally cannot see your body accurately anymore. Because of like insecurity, like your insecurity is so deep, you can't see your body accurately anymore. And so
is that why people? Sorry to interrupt you again.
No, keep going.
I'm just trying to lay a foundation for everyone.
Yeah.
So is that where I think it's bulimia and other sort of issues come out of that dysphoria? Okay. Yeah.
And so one of the really under discussed, but increasingly being talked about sort of manifestations of body dysmorphia in it's not only in men, but it's predominantly in men, is called muscle dysmorphia, which is when men like get so in their head about the size of their muscles that like they will never be big enough. And it starts to be like, it's an obsessive type of thinking pattern, and it's a depressive type of thinking pattern where no matter how much you work out, it's never enough, and you can't see your body accurately anymore. You will stand next to someone who's equally big as you, and your brain literally cannot see your body as big as theirs. You can only fixate on your flaws. You cannot see what is good about your body. It's a type of insecurity that's really intense, and it's extremely prevalent. Gyms are where it festers, right? And I'm just sitting here thinking, and it can turn into, people who are struggling with dysmorphia, who can't look at their bodies. I mean, people with muscle dysmorphia, like dudes with that, sometimes they can't like look in the mirror. They it gets really clinical pretty quickly. And, people who are suffering with that, but don't know and don't have any language around it and aren't getting any support and aren't getting any help, and aren't even aware that there's a problem. They think everyone looks at their body with that much hatred, they end up really suffering. And it sounds, it's hard to make sense of because we're looking at people who oftentimes have like really stacked bodies, but it's kind of like this addiction to trying to make it perfect, and it never will be for you. And it's an issue in men's mental health that I'm like, that should be a national conversation. We should be having, I shouldn't have had to tell you that muscle dysmorphia exists.
Do you think a lot of steroid users, those guys who kind of, I don't want to say overcompensate, because there are people that competitively do it. And you've seen, examples of people that, it helps their lives. Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, but, clearly, I used to own a modeling agency, so I know male models fairly well. And, I used to see a lot of that insecurity with them and a lot of roid use. So I don't know if those two are connected, or what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Steroid use is one of the main indicators of someone who's really suffering like with dysmorphia. And, and what you need is like a therapeutic approach. The answer isn't just get your biceps a little bigger and then you'll be happy. It doesn't work. What you have to do is you have to learn to look at your biceps and say they are enough, And I feel like so many men in general, if there's one thing that I'm like, I hope men take from this book, it's just, dude, you're already enough. I feel like masculinity, there's this part I write about, like at the very end, the epilogue of the book is just like it's just a letter called Dear Men. And it's just me writing to men being like, yo, let's talk. And like the main thing that I feel is I'm just like, so much of masculinity in America has just become gamified, and it's like this competition to be the best and the most all the time. Not that that's what masculinity is inherently, but I think that's what a bad version of it has become.
Yeah, so an example of just, I would agree with you there, because I see that in women too, in dating and counseling for dating, is when I talk to them about how they identify masculinity, and women have a higher problem with this because they have to experience things with emotion. I can look in a room of men and figure out, I have that masculinity tribal leader sort of thing where I can look at men, I can tell you kind of who they are, their experience, I can tell you character, I can tell you a lot just by watching someone in a very short period of time, because I'm designed as a man to know who qualifies in the hierarchy of my tribe, meritocracy, all that sort of stuff. In my conversation with women, a lot of times the only masculinity they can see are those indicators of muscles and what a man looks like. And there's studies and data on this. Women will look for cut jaw at certain points of their ovary process. They'll look for fatter jaws at different times of their period. And so there's kind of a thing where they do that. But a lot of them don't really know what sort of character that man has until they go and experience it, which is kind of a challenge for women. Where as men, I can identify stuff. We're designed to be providers and protectors, so we have this inherent in nature to be able to recognize danger better. And yeah, that's one of the problems that I see in dating right now, is when I talk to women, I'll be like, how do you know he's masculine? Well, he works out and goes to the gym. He's got a lot of muscles and he looks really good. And I'm like, do you have any, I can read a room and I can read people on character just by watching how they move. Maybe I spend more time reading people. I'm kind of like a CIA profile. Like, I think we know that dude. But yeah, I think it's a big issue where, yeah, maybe we have too much in society said men equal muscles or masculinity equals muscles. Yeah. And there's so much more that goes into it. Some of the most masculine men in the world, many people had them as fathers, weren't super muscly dudes. I've had conversations with women about this too. They're like, yeah, my dad was really masculine, but he wasn't like a muscular dude. He just engendered the aspects of masculinity, the provider, the protector, the stoicism, the high emotional intelligence, non-reactionary, et cetera, et cetera. Any thoughts you want to throw on some of that data?
I mean, I feel like some of what you said, I think we disagree on a few things, which that's okay. One thing that I'm trying to do with this book and trying to do just in general, I'm like, look, we're like spiraling into fascism real fast and I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't fucking like it. I'm like, I like some basics.
It never ends well.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not good. Historically, it doesn't go good. So I'm like, part of one of the things that I'm really trying to do in my own work is to be like, look, someone said something that I don't fully agree with, but that's not the main point we need to focus on right now. Let's find where we have our alignment and focus on what we can build together. I'm more interested in figuring out how we build together. But I also just want to mark just like a few things that I was like, okay, I'm not sure about that. And then I want to move to like where I think we really agree and have like real alignment. And that's like where we can do the good work together. You know what I mean? I think like some of the I take issue with some of the idea around like the inherent differences between men and women, in so much as when I look at the data, like I think that there are biological differences. I'm not saying those don't exist, but I don't think that I think so much of what we consider to be inherent is like how we've been coached to be and how we've been trained to be and how we've been raised to be. And I'm not saying that it doesn't feel inherent, because who you're raised to be feels inherent to you, right? Yeah. If you were raised Christian, it feels inherent, It feels like this is somehow who you were born to be, right? And I'm like, yeah, but if you grow up in a Muslim family, it might feel the same way to you to be Muslim, like, And I don't say that. I just say it as a thought experiment, because I think sometimes this idea that testosterone and estrogen like fundamentally change how you relate to the world and all this stuff, like, and the idea of differences between men and women, I think it can lead us down a more adversarial path in terms of like how we relate to one another, or at least it can lead us to like to wanting to feel distinct when maybe some of our similarities are more important, And I say that as someone like I am right smack dab in the middle of all of that shit, like I am super girly in a lot of ways. I am also like totally an asshole in a way that I think one could say is very masculine, right? Like I feel like I'm very like confident and loud in a way that people are like, yeah, you were raised as a man, and I'm just kind of like, sorry, I don't know what to tell you.
Masculine trait.
You know, but I've never been able to hold my wrists straight from a whole life. You know what I mean? There's I feel like I'm a blend. Like I live sort of in this middle space, and I feel like part of my job is to be a bridge, right? And to sort of be like, hey, you know, like I understand that there are differences, and they are like real, but focusing on what we have in common, I feel like is what's gonna help us get through this moment in history, at least.
Yeah, and I like what you talk about in your book, having compassion, I can't spell. I guess it's Monday. I learned how to read shit. You talk about compassion, empathy as the forces that will lead men and us all to a brighter future. Rising tide lifts all boats. I mean, men and women's fates are connected to each other. I mean,
Always
we can't live without each other, and this kind of mentality that you see online of attacking other people. You know, we can't, if you eliminate men or if you eliminate all women, we know what happens if you eliminate all women. The species dies, but technically the species would die too if you eliminated all men. We come to an end really quick as pretty fast, the dodo bird extinction. One of the things you talk about is a case for rethinking and ultimately retiring counterproductive terms like toxic masculinity and male privilege. Tell us about that.
You know, it's a nuanced conversation, right? And part of why I wrote a whole book about it is because I needed to put it in writing, right? I'll give the Cliff Notes version in a podcast, but don't fight me on it until you've actually read the essay. Because, you know, there's a reason why I write books. And it's because some things you just can't say as easily as some things need like a longer explanation and like a real depth.
You want people to read something in 2025?
I do, God damn it. I'm like, you need to put your damn phone down, get that little rectangle out of your damn hand and pick up a bigger rectangle that's made of trees.
Now you're the Clint Eastwood old man screaming, get off my lawn.
No, straight up. Because I'm like, look, do you want your brain to work again? Pick up a fucking book. I mean, Jesus Christ. Like, you cannot heal your brain by looking at your phone. It's just not possible. Like, all these people who are like, we make apps for mental health. I'm like, if it's on your phone, I don't think I believe it. Put your damn phone down and pick up something else. Anyway. But yeah, I've been thinking a lot about the term toxic masculinity and how I use it, right? Mm-hmm. And what I realized about it is just like the entire term turned into this game of telephone that went really wrong. Mm-hmm. Because the way that when I first learned about the term toxic masculinity in a fairly sort of intellectual way, like in college, right? I feel what it was originally meant to mean is like the idea, it was meant to for people to imagine like toxic masculinity, which is not all masculinity, right? Like masculinity and toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity is supposed to refer only to the parts of masculinity that are bad for everybody, men included, right? Like, you know, like being super violent, you know, and being encouraged to be super violent. Like that's bad for men and for women. That's bad for everybody. And what it was meant is for people to understand it like lead paint, right? Where men are the painters who are being asked to wield the lead paint, right? And have to in order to do their job. And then everyone else who isn't painting with the lead paint is asked to live in the rooms that are painted with lead. And it's, everybody gets fucked up by the lead, you know? And no one's doing well in a world like the painters are doing badly and the people who live in the houses they painted are doing badly. And I think that what you can see from that idea is that it's not saying that there's anything inherently bad about men, right? It's like toxic masculinity was intended to be this idea about there are parts of masculinity that have been, that men are being asked to hold, inhabit, enact, that are bad for men and bad for women, that are bad for everybody, that are, and what that term, but that's not how we understand the term anymore, right? Trying to explain it in those terms, I can see your eyes glazing over as we're having the conversation.
I'm not glazing. I'm actually reading where it originated from on ChatGPT.
Oh, but it's, you know,
do I look like I'm glazing?
Just that, or I mean, maybe I'm glazing over trying to explain this abstract ass metaphor, right? It's so much work to even explain what the metaphor fucking means, and you can see why, as a tool of mass public communication, a term that is a suggestion of a metaphor is super liable to misinterpretation.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a broad painting of whatever, I guess. You know, I mean, gets painted on a lot of people, a broad
Yeah.
stroke of, and it becomes, instead of being an educational axiom, it becomes a whipping post. So,
And what it's turned into is the idea that like that masculinity itself is toxic, which was never what it was meant as. It was meant that there are parts of it that are bad for everybody. And those parts, let's look at those parts and decide if we want to keep them. But what it's turned into is just, it's super reductive, it's oversimplified. And I think that what young men, especially young men who are chronically online, which is basically all young men now, I think what young men have heard through this game of telephone that went really badly is that like they are inherently toxic.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we cannot build a future that's good for everybody if one of our major terms is leading young men to believe that we think they are inherently toxic. Young men are not inherently toxic. Masculinity is not inherently toxic.
Yeah. And it looks like it originated by a guy named Robert Bly.
Yeah. I quote him in the beginning of my book.
Really?
He's a really interesting thinker.
I would say so. I don't know much about this, so I can't really speak to it, but it looks like he wanted to return to authentic masculinity through mythology, poetry, and men's retreats. Mythology and poetry, that's feminine. So,
but not how Robert Blythe did it, not how he thought about it.
Really? I'll have to learn more about him.
And also, poetry is not poetry's not feminine, historically speaking. Poetry is like across, everybody did poetry.
Yeah, I suppose the original Stoics, maybe you could call some of their work poetry.
Well, I mean, ancient Greeks, half of the philosophers were writing poems too, Poetry is, I think the idea of poetry is feminine. That's super modern.
Yeah. I'll have to learn more about him. I'm going to look into this further.
Can I read you the quote from the beginning that I used from him?
Yeah.
He who is truly a man keeps walking, dragging his guts behind.
Yeah, that feels pretty true.
Right, and I'm like, that's not a good way. That's not a good way for anybody to live. We gotta heal that shit. Don't drag your guts behind you. Like you gotta heal. I want to help.
The aspect of men and women, the journey's different. I had a gal on a few months ago who does a lot of counseling for men, and there was something we were talking about, and I presented it as very ugly. It's a very ugly aspect for men. I think one of the best ways I've heard it, women start at the top of the mountain. They're valued very early in youth, and we value women in their youth and beauty because of their ability to have children at a very young age and at a very healthy stage. The older women get, the harder it is for them to have children, the harder it is for them to have successful pregnancies, et cetera, et cetera. And so as a society, not a society, that's wrong. Biologically, I can't say anything today, evidently, on Monday. Biologically, we seek out women for fertility because of their youthful nature. And it's very young. We vault them. We celebrate them. I mean, there's no one 50 years old on the Miss America tour. They do have Miss Moms and stuff like that, I guess, too. But, they're celebrated for their femininity. They're valued, I mean, even as a man, just to hear the term women and children first when the ship goes down, you're like, I guess fuck us. I mean, we let it go because we're like providers and protectors, and we realize that protecting the womb is the most important part to the succession of propagation of species, and that's all we do is live to propagate the species, really. But it's dark. It's a dark reality to live with. Men and women, children, and pets are loved unconditionally. Men are not. We have to earn our place in the world. And the best analogy I've ever heard is women start at the top of the mountain and they're measured by how far they fall, and men start in the valley, worthless, and they have to climb up the mountain, and they're measured by how well they climb up the mountain and contribute to society. Most men's value peaks around 50 or 60. It's when we earn our most money. It's when we're most successful. It's when we can contribute the most to the world. I mean, the reason we send young men off to war is because they're worthless. They're worthless in a way that they can't contribute to society. They have no skills. They have no value. And plus, they can do war better than us because they're young. And, 50, I can't carry an 80-pound rucksack. But, so it's a dark place that men have to kind of grow from, where they have to realize that the world will whip them and kick them if they don't build themselves into something to contribute. And that's our hero's journey as men. We go through a hero's journey. Women don't. They're given their value at birth and in young age. Now, they get very angry when they start losing that value as they age, because we value the womb and we value fertility and it's at its highest peak. And, she was commenting to me, she goes, your outlook's kind of dark. And I'm like, it doesn't negatively affect me. I just see the reality of it and the logic and reason of it, where it's not fun. It's not fun to, be worthless in your 20s and, on your tribe, everyone goes, oh, you're the noob who doesn't know anything, at the office. And you have to build something yourself and make something yourself. And then finally at like 40s and 50s, you finally mastered yourself and life if you've done the work. And it's an ugly, bloody, vicious process that shapes you, but it is our hero's journey. And in the end, people love us at 40, 50, and 60. We're really great.
And I guess, the question I have for, that is dark, dude. That's dark.
It does feel dark, but that's the reality of it. This is the universe. This is the universe.
When I think about why part of why I was like, I can't do this like manhood, masculinity shit. Like when I was just like, I got to get out of this rat race. I was just like, I can't live my life like that. That's too dark for me, right? I just can't. I don't want to. I protest, right? That's kind of. But I also just think, the world doesn't have to be like that. And I don't say that I'm not saying that the world that makes the world like soft or whatever, so much as I'm thinking like, I want people to feel like everyone should feel valued at every point in their life. Like people are inherently valuable. Everyone is valuable. And I don't say that in a Pollyanna-ish, like stupid way. That is a deeply true thing. Everyone in your community is valuable for different reasons. Everyone brings something to the table. And I think a world in which young men feel they have no value is a world in which we failed them.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we're at now.
And we got to fix it. Young men have value, and I care deeply for them. And I'm not down to keep living in a world where you got to wait to 40 to feel value. I don't want to live in that world.
There's different aspects of value. Certainly we value people that go off to war, but the reason we send them off to war is because they don't have any other applicable skills in society. Men are always expendable. That's the reason they say women and children first, and men die on the ship. That's just the way it is. Yeah.
Can I propose a thought?
Sure.
Just about the women and children first bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, whenever people talk about that, I'm just like, okay, so what you just told me is that there weren't enough lifeboats.
Yeah, that's true.
No, like straight up, dude. I mean that on a profound existential, spiritual level. Like straight up when it comes to the Titanic, I'm like, first off, why did we decide that it is acceptable to send people into the middle of the ocean ever without enough lifeboats for everyone to get off of the fucking vessel if it sinks? That is ridiculous. That makes no fucking sense. We should all just say no. Yeah. Just say no to that. Say no to a world where, because it's not like we don't have the resources to build the lifeboats.
Sometimes there's not time to displace everyone on the boat. The boat's sinking.
Well, sure, if there's not time, but like time was sort of like, it was capacity that was the issue with the Titanic as far as I understand it.
Definitely.
And as far as if you have to choose, by the moment at which you don't have enough capacity to for everyone to be saved, like you have already failed everyone, right? And you've set up a world where people are going to feel valueless and you're going to create I don't want to live in that world. Build enough fucking lifeboats. The other thing is that in the context of the Titanic specifically and in general is like, if your ship sank, sometimes it is just legitimately an accident. But it wasn't in the case of the Titanic, and it isn't in a lot of cases. It was an engineering failure, and it was about the hubris and recklessness of the people who ran that ship and wanted to send it to ocean way before it was ready and pretended that it was invulnerable and didn't put enough lifeboats on it because they were too cocky about their stupid little design and thought it was going to be perfect.
Yeah. And probably more interested in making money. And
yes,
we see that now where people are more interested in making money and they ship stuff, whether it's
but that's a world we're living in en masse. Like we are currently living in the Titanic, where we live in this world designed by 3 greedy fucking men who are terrible, right? Who are just saying, oh, it has to be women and children first because we're sinking. And it's, dude, you made the boat. We don't have to be in this situation.
I think that's been an axiom before the Titanic, though.
Sure.
But we value the womb. I mean, when you really understand human nature, in my opinion, everything is about the propagation of the species. The cars we buy, the things we do, it's all about the propagation of the species and making the species survive. And as men, I mean, we're, part of us not getting unconditional love is that's what the hero's journey that shapes us into masculinity and being men. It's the hammer to the anvil of the blacksmith. It shapes us as a sword, and thereby we can give more back to society. And we do the toughest jobs in the world. We are the foundation, as you said, of this thing. If you got rid of us, there'd be no one doing the sewer jobs, the internet wires into the world jobs, the mining jobs, everything that this world is founded on, that everybody sits around in air conditioning enjoys, is done by 99% men. And the hard, ugly, sweaty, nasty jobs, I mean, you still see that 99% of men do these jobs, and they are the infrastructure, foundational support for these things. And we do them because we're providing for families, we're providing for the propagation of the species. I mean, is it a fun job? No, not really. If you really look at it, from the outside, you're like, this seems ugly. How come, as a man, I would love unconditional love. I get it from my dog, because that's why they call it man's best friend.
Is that the only place you get unconditional love in your life?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Dude, we got to work on that.
Where else can I get it?
Your friends, man.
No.
Dude, your friends are supposed to love you. Like, your family's supposed to love you. No.
My family,
I don't like that. We got to do better. We got to get Chris Voss some fucking unconditional love, y'all, okay?
There's no such thing as unconditional love.
Yes, no, I have it. I have a lot of it.
I'll take your word for it.
But I like living in a world where I feel a lot of unconditional love,
Well, that's good.
But I feel like, that's the thing. I'm like a world where people think it's acceptable I'm like, nah, everyone deserves more love. And this idea of manhood, like it's the core of what I'm talking about. This idea that being a man means living without unconditional love. I'm just like, I don't like that. I don't think that that's how people should live. I think everyone deserves to be loved unconditionally.
A lot of it comes down to biology, how we've developed as human nature over eons of time. So,
what do you mean? How does biology mean you don't need unconditional love?
I mean, there's just reasons for it. I mean, to us, the womb is the most valuable thing in the world. Propagation of the species. It's vaulted over everything. We serve it.
But why does that mean you don't need unconditional love?
It's because that's what shapes us. I mean, we actually are. Really,
no, you aren't. You're here. You're not disposable. If you're here, you're not disposable. If you're here, we need you.
There's always another man who can replace me. Judging by what I see in dating, evidently there's plenty of men.
I think you are not replaceable. I don't think people are replaceable easily.
I mean, I would agree with you on the aspect of human beings and caring about one another, et cetera, et cetera. But when push comes to shove, I mean, most men in our protective aspects, will save a woman who's a stranger. You find a woman who's being raped, beaten, or attempted murder on the street, we'll jump in and put our life on the line for that woman. We're protecting the womb. And we don't even know who she is. We're just like, we're men, this is what we do. It's been built into our nature for that reason.
But I still just don't understand why that means you don't need unconditional love and deserve it. I mean,
I would like to have it. It would be a nice luxury, but
it's not a luxury, dude. Dude, unconditional love is not a luxury. Like, we got to get rid of. That's what I'm saying. I feel like we have so many men and boys who are growing up in this manosphere, being taught that unconditional love is a luxury product. I'm like, unconditional love is not a fucking Fendi bag. It's not a fucking like Supreme, hoodie, right? Like, unconditional love, it's not Gucci shoes, right? Like, unconditional love is like what everyone needs, everyone deserves.
So, how would you measure unconditional love?
I think it's about people who are willing to love you even when you're fucking up. It's about people who are willing to let you learn, people who are willing to let you make mistakes and still see the best in you. And, I mean, and also I'm okay acknowledging that a teeny bit, because I'm sure there's going to be like, I know that there's a lot of people who, I mean, like at times I can be pretty depressive myself, right? I know I sound super optimistic, but I can be pretty like dark. You can read it in the book, but I'm like, I'm okay acknowledging that the idea that perfect unconditional love doesn't exist. But I'm like, I am getting to 97%, 99% in some of my relationships. And that's, I'll round up to 1 at that point, I'll round up to 100. I'm okay with, I feel, I have friends where if I ended up in jail, they would still love me, And I just think everyone deserves that. And I don't want to live in a world where men don't think they deserve unconditional love. Chris, you deserve unconditional love, and we got to get you some.
No one deserves anything. This is the universe.
See, that's what I don't like that thinking. We deserve goodness. We deserve kindness. We deserve beauty. Like, we deserve a lot. Not in an entitled to it way, just in a, you're on this planet and you're a human being, and that's amazing.
It's a nice option. But no,
we can provide for each other, which is why it's ridiculous that we don't. Like, we have the technology to feed everybody. Fucking feed everybody.
Sure,
Come on.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of good things we should do. But I'm glad you speak to this. We've had authors on the book on the show that are licensed psychologists, and 25 years ago they wrote books on what they were concerned about with young boys in schools and what they were seeing happening. Yeah. And they wrote books, entitled.
I've read some of those. Yeah.
Yeah. We've had some authors on the show that tie a lot of issues with what's going on with men now to school shootings, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And there are issues that are going on with men. I mean, right now, I live in kind of a funny world where I run this huge dating group of 5,000 people. I poll, I counsel both men and women for dating. And one of the challenges is we have these women that have really attacked the toxic masculinity and men are bad, blah, blah, blah. And, all this noise that we hear on social media and in the media too, as well. And just constantly shaming and belittling men and telling men that they're worthless. Yet if men speak that way, then, we're sexist, misogynist. But the misandry that goes on against men is just extraordinary. I mean, I've seen videos on TikTok of kill all men as a hashtag, scam
that
all
shit
men.
Don't fly with me.
I've seen some of those. I've seen women literally posting videos on how to scam men for money and literally teaching each other. And these videos are in the trillions of views and probably billions of views that have been made. And it's just been a whipping. And so 88% of men have pretty much said, we're not dating in the hetero community. We're not dating. And we're just not interested. And if a woman falls on our lap and she's the perfect angel, maybe we'll marry her. But other than that, they're not actually pursuing. And so what I've seen is all these women for the past, this weird 60-year experiment we've been doing to try and flip biology is to and basically take women and turn them into men, because they're just doing masculine roles and they become more masculine than ever before. I mean, sometimes I go to a coffee with some women, I'm just like, I'm talking to another dude here. You're just another dude, and it's not attractive to me.
I mean, maybe she's just not the woman for you.
No, that's not it.
Because there's a lot of dudes. I mean, there's a lot of guys who like that's their dream woman.
It might be,
there's a lot of dudes who like a woman who's like in control and powerful and confident, you know what I mean? And then there's other people who are like, I want a little more of a dom subby thing. I want a little more of a, like people just like different things.
Yeah. That's where you come into the masculine and the feminine. What's the word I'm looking for? The opposition. So usually feminine men look for a masculine women and masculine men look for feminine women. We look for that opposite to complement us. So
I think I can like sort of fucks with some of that, but only if we're living in a world where being a feminine man and being a masculine woman are like cool.
I mean, people can do what they want.
Yeah, but I feel like right now we don't live in a world where being perceived as a feminine man makes you safe or okay, And I think that more feminine men deserve safety and kindness and all that stuff too. And I think that it's if you find someone who isn't compatible with you, like you're maybe just not compatible.
Yeah, And so what's happening with women right now is I see women in their 40s and 50s who can't find the masculine men they're looking for. And I'm like, you've been screaming at men that their toxic masculinity is bad and they're shaming them for it. Even, all men are bad. A lot of men ran off and left dating over the Me Too thing. And I mean, it started out as a very important moment to discuss those ideas and some of the worst people of it. But at the end of it, I think when people started waking up and going, this is becoming something that the original was not, when men were just getting called out for bad dating. And I think when the actor is Aziz, I forget his name, I think he's on Parks and Recreation.
Aziz Ansari.
Or the author. Yeah. He just took a bad date from a woman who was clearly playing to try and get a story and going after a Hollywood actor. And it was just a bad date. She tried to turn it into a Me Too scenario. And, the victimhood competition as well is out of control too. But for men, women now are having a hard time finding the men they want at 40s, 50s. They're like, where are all the masculine men? And you're like, you told them that you shamed them into obscurity where they were told their masculinity is bad. And now you want it? And then the other problem that women have in the future coming up, and I would say now too, from what I see when women talk to me, is a lot of Gen Zers have checked out. And they're not, these men have been beaten down and shamed, and they've seen so much ugliness in the dating pool that they're not going to college. And women hypergamously date up. They're all going to college. The women are now more than ever, but they're not going to be able to find their hypergamous mates as they progress through life. And that's a real problem for women that's coming down the pike. And I already see it in mass right now. It's crazy. And women are just like, where are all the good men? You see that online. They're always screaming, where are all the good men? You told them they were toxic, so they're off fishing, working on posts and shit.
That was a lot, Chris. That was a lot.
I kind of did journey through a few topics.
That was a whole lot of stuff, and I'm like I have a lot of, so I'm and again, like, it's okay that we don't agree on everything right now. Sure. We don't have to. Like, I definitely, like, a lot of what you said. I'm like, for me, I'm like, I don't know if I like, I will also say, and I don't think this will come as a shock to you, I'm not an expert in heterosexual dating. So I do not know a ton about exactly how I can only sort of sympathize rather than empathize within the context of this conversation. But what I will say is, I think we're scared to have a conversation on sort of like the feminist side about what young male loneliness means. I think we're scared to acknowledge that like loneliness is real and it really hurts, and that living a life where you feel you'll never find partnership, where you feel you'll never get married, where you may not even feel, and I have a whole chapter on incels, like, too, like, I got a whole thing, like, living a life where you feel that you may never even get to experience sexual intimacy while you're on planet Earth. That is someone who's suffering. And I think that we've, rather than sort of looking at that suffering and saying, how do we make meaning of that? How do we work to create a world where that isn't happening, because it is a problem? Like, rather than taking that suffering seriously, we've dismissed it or just looked away because it made us too uncomfortable.
Make fun of it online. And every time I turn on TikTok, I'm just being assaulted as a man. And
that's the other thing, is I'm like, dude, you got to get off TikTok, Chris. No, straight up. If you want to be a healthy man, you got everyone's gender like is getting so fucked up by TikTok now. Like, everyone is I'm watching people like spiral further and further into this oblivion on all sides of the equation. Like, we're all falling off of our axis as a global community because of the predatory algorithms that are just trying to keep us broken, so we keep scrolling forever. Because that's their goal. I mean, that's one place where I'm like, I don't know if we have to agree on everything here, because if you and I can just agree that every young man in America needs to get the fuck off of TikTok and talk to real human beings in their real goddamn life, because that is the only way to learn, actually live. And also because it's ridiculous to let a bunch of Chinese businessmen and ridiculous to let Mark Zuckerberg fucking prey on your brain and your psyche to keep you a literal user of a drug, which is just the dopamine that you need every single time you go like this. Like, it's just, it's part of why I can't be bothered to post much on Instagram anymore. Like, I used to be like an influencer or whatever. I just can't be bothered to keep, I don't want people here.
Yeah. I would totally agree with you. I mean, I'm a person who grew up I'm a person who grew up in a world where, we didn't have these things. And so to me,
go outside.
I still place I still place a higher value on interpersonal relationships and human directness. So
it's like people are like, what's the one thing that we can do to heal, like to solve the sorry, I was glitching for a second. What's the one thing we can do to heal the male loneliness epidemic? And I'm like, go outside, join a gym or an intramural sports thing and talk to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Get off your fucking phone. Like, your phone is, because also it's just like, everyone has all these fucked up, crazy ideas about gender now that are so intense and are based in, they are picking the content that will make you keep coming back. They're picking the stuff that's going to make your blood boil. Like, when you open your phone, Chris, it's going to show you the most vile, awful thing it can find a woman saying, because it knows that keeps you coming back. And that is not what almost anyone in the real world actually think.
But they do have good Metallica videos on there. So,
and that, if only using that, if it were designed in our best interest and it was just like, here's good music, enjoy, here's some fun stuff about science, have a good time, then I'd be like, yay. But the moment that it picks up on an insecurity in your little brain, like for me, it'll just be like the moment it like sees how I respond to a video of a shirtless guy and like my dysmorphia gets all triggered and I feel all ugly and I keep looking, then it's, oh, we're going to do that forever.
Yeah.
We're just going to feel ugly forever.
I watched a snake video. I'm not into snakes. In fact, I don't like them at all. Yeah. But I watched a snake video for the whole minute. There was something interesting about whatever. It was the guy he's a vet, I think, or he runs a zoo and he's a trainer. And so he's always pulling them out of shelves and they're falling on the floor and, and all this shit. And so I watched him just for the gee whiz of that dude's going to get his face bit. And now I have an algorithm with a bunch of snakes. And
you're like, I don't even like snakes.
I'm like, I hate fucking snakes. Like, reprogram. But you're right. We need to get out. We need to interpersonal more. And I love your thesis of, a rising tide lifts all boats. We need to think from abundance instead of scarcity. We're all on this boat together, flying through the universe that's cold, ugly, and doesn't like, it's a game of survival, really, when it comes down to a species. And
we got to survive together because we're on this marble together.
Exactly. Yeah. You start punching holes in the boat, we're all going to sink, which is kind of interesting how our politics is working right now. Yeah. Final thoughts as we go out. Final pitch, Kelly, to people to pick up your book.
I got it edgy. Okay. First off, if you identify as a feminist, please pick up this book. Please, please, please. If you give any shits about any of the young men in your life, please pick up this book. If you are a man and you give a shit about yourself and you feel like feminists stopped talking to you or caring about you forever ago, please pick up this book. And also the thought that I'm like, damn, I wish, because this conversation's been interesting, right? It's challenged me in some places. It's made me uncomfortable a few times. That's okay. I'm growing. I'm learning. You're growing. You're learning. We're doing it together. But I wish that we had this before I wrote the thing, because I'm already like, damn, that's a good bit. But here's what I think is maybe my biggest summation of how I feel about contemporary gender is the young. I'm trying to figure. I want to make it the perfect talking point. Like, the young men's equivalent of burning your bra is smashing your phone.
I suppose so. Wouldn't it be burning your jockstrap or something? I don't know.
No, because your jockstrap is not trapping you. Or, I mean, that was funny.
It depends on the guy. My jockstrap.
But your jockstrap is not like oppressing you, right? I don't think.
Mine did.
But also, it kept you safe. Like, it's safe.
That's true.
You need that shit. You don't want a fucking lacrosse ball coming at you without a jockstrap on.
That's true. Yeah.
Come on. Like, I was raised. I have a dick, right? I know these things. Yeah. But yeah, I'm like, just fucking smash the phone, dude. You want to get free? Like, you got to get off of that thing. Like, you got to get back into the light, into the real world with some air and some oxygen and some fucking trees.
The other thing, too, is I would say to young men is you need to be around men more. Men operate well in tribes, and I believe, if I remember the data rightly, our masculinity or our testosterone actually increases when we're around other men. And we build each other better when we're men as a tribe. And that's one of the things that I see men have really been diminished by. I grew up going to the Boy Scouts. You can make some jokes about some of the aspects of that, but the failures of the Boy Scouts. But
I was also a Boy Scout.
Yeah. I mean, and it taught you camaraderie. There were things that you learned about being around men. And one of the problems we have in our society is a lot of men, when they enter relationships, they abandon their men friends. I don't know if that happens in the gay and trans community and LGBTQ, but here in hetero world, they tend to abandon their men friends. And then when they get divorced, this is a big conversation we have in the singles communities. When men get divorced, they don't have a support crew. They don't have a support mechanism. They've abandoned all their friends to serve a woman. And women, they still have their committees. They still have all their girlfriends and stuff because they've been keeping those active. And men need to hang out with other men. Go to the gym, like you say, do things. We're trying. It all comes down to caveman shit when it comes down to it. Men go in tribes. They go do activities. That's the reason men love to game, is because it's a time where we can get together as a tribe and we can go do shit. We can achieve shit. We can kill shit. We can learn from each other. And we also shape each other too. Men are vicious to each other when it comes to our nature. And we do that because we build each other. We shape each other. It's part of the anvil and the blacksmith process that I talked about. And we need that. Men need to start hanging around more men and not other incels, I suppose. You wrote an essay.
Yeah, I think men need to have actual friendships, and you need actual friends, dude. You gotta have actual bros. Like, you need actual friends that you spend time with physically. And I mean, friends online are cool, but like, buddies on Reddit don't count if you're not actually friends with them.
That's
right?
true.
And being on a comment thread is not a friendship. It can lead to one. Online friendships can be real, but the young men are extremely lonely, and young men need more friends. And actually, men just in general are pretty lonely in our culture. There's some data on that in the book too. And men need friendships, and because you know what, Chris, you're gonna hate this. You're gonna hate this so much. You want to know what friendships can be a source of?
What?
Unconditional love. Got him. I'm just saying, my friends love me pretty much unconditionally. They do. I got real ones. Everybody needs to feel that. And you can't just get that in a relationship. You got to get that in friendships.
So I like your message. Get out there in the real world. It's so weird now because, like, when I go on dates, I'll call a woman and they're like, it's so weird because no one calls each other anymore.
I'm a phone caller too, and people think it's so weird. I'm like, I'm like, texting's fine, but let me just can I just call you? Like, your voice is nice and I want to hear it.
Yeah. And
your voice turns me on more than pixels. Can I call you, please?
It's kind of have this. I think maybe what you're trying to address is, and I'm not going to speak for you, I'm asking a question, is, we need a better intimacy levels and care for each other in this world in person, maybe.
Yeah. And we have to acknowledge that there are men at the top right now who are spending all of their energy trying to figure out how they can profit off of our alienation from one another.
Oh yeah. Politics has always been that way.
Yeah. And those people need to be like, I hope we can understand them more as adversaries. People need to know Mark Zuckerberg is not your friend. He's not? No. Some people think he is. I'm like, Elon Musk is not your friend either. Like, Twitter is not designed to make your brain do good. Twitter is designed to make you feel bad.
I thought anybody who took too much ketamine, they had to wear a diaper and shit their pants, would be my friend. Buddy? Was a racist fucking Nazi making Nazi signals. He made the Nazi signal twice. So, and he's from South Africa. That kind of tells you what you need to know. Thank you very much. Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. Order up Jacob's book wherever fine books are sold. It is called Before They Were Men: Essays on Manhood, Compassion, and What Went Wrong, out August 26, 2025. I can't believe we're in August already. I'm still in like February of 2020. Pick up his book wherever fine books are sold, and let's have this discussion. Let's try and be a lifter as opposed to tearing everybody down all the time like I do. Anyway, guys, go to goodreads.com /Chris Voss, linkedin.com /Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1, the TikTokity, and all those crazy places on the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.